I think I ranted too long about that mermaid picture. Hi, I'm Mark, and this is Subliteral Network. I make art and comics, and thanks for watching. Remember to hit like and subscribe, and to leave your feedback in the comments. You can read my Una the Cave Bunny comics at radiocomics.com. Now, I post art daily, 5 days a week on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and this is a roundup of that work in case you missed it, with a little more detailed description added. Please visit my Patreon page if you'd like to support my work, and all these links are in my description and bio. And remember to please watch to the end so that you don't miss anything. Finished ink drawing of Krakatoa Kate from the Mighty Mouse cartoon short, Mighty Mouse in Krakatoa. So I think last week I showed the pencil sketch that I did. I did a few of the pencil sketches, and the one that looked, well, the one that came out like this was the one that I picked to make the final of. And one of the reasons I keep going back to animated characters is because the designers work to create the simplest, most animatable shapes that they can do to make the animation work and easier to produce, and so they can produce it on budget and schedule. So by the time they were done with Krakatoa Katie, she was just reduced to very few simple elements that just it ends up just looking really good and just being easy to draw, and you can just get results out of drawing a well animated character according to the model sheets and what the designers wanted to do with it. That was the case. That's probably why I keep drawing Krakatoa Katie. She's simple, easy, and just very cute to draw. One of my insanely muscular Superwoman drawings, and listen, when I draw Superwoman, I mean it. I'm not kidding around. She is just about as big as she possibly could ever get. And I just felt like, I don't know, I was just doing these sketches of Superwoman, and over time she just kept getting huger and broader and more muscular. And you can see it's just a pencil sketch, but sometimes it helps my work, to kind of push things. If I push things to the ultimate, then I can kind of pull back from that. But it's too often I find myself, I'm not pushing to begin with, so I'll just over push in sketching and stuff, and like emphasize physique, emphasize action, stuff like that. And then you can say, well, wait a minute, that's way too far. Or maybe not. You say, listen, I have to push it even more to get the effect that I want. And then you can pull back from that to get a drawing that has a lot more life into it, because there's life behind it. During May of every year, there's something that goes on called Mermay, where artists post pictures on, well, mostly I see it on Instagram, pictures of mermaids. And I didn't really do any of it because I don't know, it didn't quite get me going. I didn't want to participate that much. But I remembered I had a nice little drawing of a mermaid that I did, so I posted that. And trying to figure out what I liked about it was that I put her in like some perspective where she's kind of coming forward from the background. She's in kind of a different pose than you usually see. She's topless, which I wanted to make work in a picture without emphasizing it, so that kind of happened. And I felt like when I was done with it, I said, okay, anybody can kind of draw a mermaid, but you want to draw a different spin on it. I try to give the fish half of her like kind of a heavy, sort of really fishy and powerful look. Not just like an extra part that's trailing behind her, but this is supposed to be the part that drives her through the water, and she'd probably be as athletic like a seal, just able to move and flow. And it takes like a powerful, flexible musculature to do that. So, I mean, you could say I'm overthinking it. I like the mermaids in Disney's Peter Pan. And I think, if I remember right, they were this way in the book too. They were vain, they were jealous of Wendy because she had Peter's attention, and they were mean. And I thought, that is something that you don't see a whole lot. I mean, just mermaids with personality and with bad personalities. And I really loved that. I'm going to have to look back at the movie and kind of see what they did, because I think they even snuck topless mermaids in there that just had their hair hanging down. or they wouldn't come completely out of the water, just their heads were sticking out when they were splashing Wendy and pulling her hair and stuff. And that was you wouldn't think that a movie of that age would have a scene like that. At least by today's standards, you wouldn't. It's not that, it's just that somebody would have gone over a modern film and said, listen, you've got to put something on the tops of those mermaids. I don't care if anybody can't see it, or if that's not the point, that we have to be extra careful. But I feel like back in some of the older animated films, the studios weren't looking like very closely at the animation departments, and there was a kind of a more of an artist feel to, much less political, much less censorious, but just artists really trying to stretch what they could achieve in the films. The kind of images they could present, even though film standards and policies were pretty restrictive. There was a certain looseness that was based on the kind of traditions of art. And I feel like, that's gone, forever, of course. But the Disney Peter Pan is notable to me for that. If not maybe so much else, just for the fact that artists tend to have say over aesthetic matters in some of the older Disney films, and not so much boards of people trying to figure out whether is it perfectly appropriate for children, or is it something that's going to be a real problem. They were really going for art and not so much trying to restrict. They didn't think of art as being as dangerous, I guess, as we think about it now. A finished page without text from my Una the Cave Bunny comic. The story is Flight of the Cave Bunnies. When I'm making comics, one of my things is to really try for visual and graphic clarity. And this is why I like this page, because when I did the layouts, I wanted to make a clear action happen so you could see what's happening at the beginning and where the movement is going. And that involves taking out a lot of stuff. More than it involves putting it in, you're just subtracting detail and clutter and focusing on the action. And once you have that, then if you want to, there's room. You know what to add to that and what not to add. And I think pushing for that clarity is just the thing that can make a comic book page really improve once you work out what's happened to it. And this one, what's happening on it, and this one worked out the way that I wanted it to. As I worked on the story, I kept finding that I didn't want to cram a lot of actions and changes onto a single page, because that was hurting the clarity that I wanted to achieve. So I keep finding that I really want to spread things out, kind of like in a manga style, where I'm taking a moment and spreading it across a few pages, because I feel like I can make better pages that way, rather than trying to cram a bunch of stuff and dialogue onto a single page to make the page count smaller. It's kind of a real problem. Sometimes you really have to stuff stuff in there, but when you don't, especially during action sequences, I think you can stretch and get some better work going, because you're concentrating on less. You're concentrating on a focused action and just a few changes, a few transitions, and so you can get a page that has a lot more clarity, a lot more action, and room for word balloons, which is one of those things that trips me up a lot, and it trips up a lot of people too. You don't want to have to stick a word balloon over something important or something cool that you've drawn. Big drawing on 5.5 by 8.5 cardstock, and I designed a bunch of characters for Una the Cave Bunny. Characters, environments, and kind of how to approach backgrounds. But when I wasn't doing that, or in other words, I'd be drawing the strip and I would think of stuff. I would think, oh, maybe I could make this costume a little more raggedy around the edges. And then you got to figure out how to put, when you got to make those little floating ridges on the edges where it looks like it's ripped or crudely cut leather. You got to figure out how many of them, how raggedy is it actually going to look. So I would sketch, and I would come up with these like this. I would sketch stuff like this out, and then I would just sort of start playing around with stuff like like I said, the raggedy edges of leather, and that was where I would take those ideas and kind of recycle them into the comics that I was doing. So it was kind of, I guess that was part of the design phase, or at least I folded it into my Una the K-Bunny design work. And this was, I had a pencil sketch that had, it was just a plain pencil sketch with, no clothing, hardly anything in it at all. And I said, well, I'm going to draw a woman, and it was just like a giant butt, and I'm just going to draw that, and just to see how I'm going to make it work. And later on, she became this cave girl. And later on after that, I tested out kind of my inking styles. At the bottom, you can see I did that with a Sharpie, just one of those giant square-edged laundry Sharpies. And up top, I did some fine work with these Copic pens and these other ones that I use. I used to use Microns a lot. These are Micron pens, which are good, but Copics are better. So I used a lot of different kinds of pens on it to see what would happen. And there's a lot to be said for sketching and stuff, just unrelated to any project you're working on. If you're related to science, it's a lot more like basic research. You're not going for anything, but you're learning a lot through it, and you're not doing something really terrible like testing on animals. You're just sketching and drawing along on paper, and you find stuff that works, and then you find stuff that doesn't work, and you stop doing what doesn't work and do more of what does work.